Hello everyone, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my July reads. My reading month in July wasn't that good because I had to do Camp NaNoWriMo this month, so a lot of my reading time was spent doing more writing and thinking about my writing, and I don't know, just getting myself lost in another story is always so much harder when you're trying to write your own story. So I did only read 6 books this month, which is less than my usual, but I'm okay with that. Again, I'll be able to read more books next month since I'm not going to be writing as much. The first book that I read this month was Carrie by Stephen King, and this was actually a book that I read in a readathon at the beginning of July, and I did a vlog for that, so you should check that out. Carrie is basically about a girl who has telekinetic powers, and she was raised by a really religious mother, so she doesn't really know a lot of things that normal teenagers know. And her mother also raised her to believe that she needed to constantly ask for forgiveness and that her powers were sent by the devil and stuff. So it's really just her trying to find her way in the world and overcome a lot of the things that her mother had done to her and that the bullies at high school had done to her. I did really enjoy Carrie. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, I believe. And the reason why I didn't give it 5 stars was because there was some scenes that made me a little uncomfortable, which I did talk about in my readathon vlog. But it was a very good book, and I did really enjoy the main character and just reading about everything that went down. So if you're a horror fan or a Stephen King fan, then I would definitely recommend checking Carrie out. The next book that I read was The Mysterious Benedict Society. Now, I have such a love in my heart for this book. It is one of my childhood favorites. I read it when I was younger. It is part of a trilogy, and there's also a 4th book that's like a kind of spin-off book, but it is so good. I think someone of any age can read this. It's kind of like a mystery book, and it really makes you think about a lot of things, deals with puzzles and all sorts of things like that, so I find it really fascinating, even though it is a middle grade book, so it's written for a slightly younger audience. The Mysterious Benedict Society is basically about these gifted children that pass this test that leads them to have to solve this big mystery, and it is such a good book. I just can't recommend it enough. Obviously, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. This was really just a nostalgia trip for me, to be honest. They had a TV show adaptation, and it just made me want to go back and visit one of my favorite books. The next book that I read this month is definitely my favorite book of the month. It's one of my favorite books of the year. I absolutely adored this book, and that is Project Hail Mary. So if you didn't know, Project Hail Mary was written by Andy Weir, and he is the same guy that wrote The Martian, which is a really popular book and a really popular movie about a guy who gets stuck alone on Mars. And I love The Martian. I read it last year. It was such a good book. The first time I read The Martian was when I was younger, and then I read it again last year and I loved it. So I expected to love Project Hail Mary, but it really still blew me away. This is basically about a guy who finds himself alone on a spaceship with no memories of his past, and he has to solve this mystery that will save all of humanity. And it is a thrilling, gripping book. I absolutely recommend it to you, no matter what types of books you love to read, but especially if you like to read sci-fi and if you read The Martian. So 5 out of 5 stars, would recommend. The next book I read this month isn't nearly as exciting. It was just a book that I had to read for school, so I'm not gonna rate it or talk about it. I just thought I'd mention it because I am counting it as part of my total books in the year, since I did have to read it. The second to last book that I read this month was Again But Better by Riccio, and I did really enjoy this book. I watched her writing vlogs, I watch her on YouTube, and I really love her. She is a great YouTuber, and her name on YouTube is Pulling Bananas Books, so I would definitely check her out if you like bookish content. But this book was really good. It did take me a while to get into the writing style. I'm not really sure why, if it's just because I'm not used to reading contemporaries, but once I started listening to the audiobook, it definitely made me like the writing style more and like the characters more. I went back and forth between reading the book and listening to the audiobook, and I did love both. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Again, it just took me a little bit to get used to the writing style. I wasn't really liking it at first, but I do love the characters and the story, and I really couldn't put it down once I started reading it. So I would definitely recommend. Sorry for the lighting change and everything. I had to stop filming. But another thing that I wanted to add about Again But Better is that I felt like I could really relate to the main character, and there were a lot of things that she talked about that I just really saw myself in, so that definitely helped my enjoyment of the book. And I do feel like the main character is very relatable in a lot of ways, and just to me, she was relatable in specific ways that I don't know if it'll apply to everybody else, but it did really make me love her. Again But Better is about a girl who is very shy and doesn't really like social interaction, so her first college experience wasn't that great. She didn't really leave her dorm or anything, so she decides to study abroad in London to have a second chance, and she wants to be more outgoing and, you know, do a lot of things, travel and make friends, and it's just a really good contemporary read. Now, the last book that I read this month is not going to be a surprise to most of you. It is Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Dark Artifices series, and I read Lady Midnight last month and I vlogged it for my channel, so it would be great if you guys could check that out. I put a lot of effort into that video, but I'm also coming out with a vlog for Lord of Shadows soon, like in a couple of weeks or something, and obviously I loved this book. The Shadowhunters Chronicles is a fantasy series by Cassandra Clare, and this is part of the Dark Artifices trilogy, which is her third series slash trilogy. She has like 3 trilogies now. One of them is not completed, and 1 series. So I definitely recommend the Shadowhunters Chronicles if you are a fan of fantasy, and Dark Artifices is my favorite trilogy in the Shadowhunters Chronicles. I absolutely love all of the characters and everything about it. Lord of Shadows is one of my favorite Shadowhunter books of all time. Just like Lady Midnight, it is a little slow to get off, but once you get into the story, it is incredible. Julian, obviously, I love him so much. He is one of my favorite characters of all time. I love him. And the plot is really good, and it's just amazing how she can juggle all of these different POVs and still make a cohesive book. This book is very heartbreaking and fills you with a lot of emotions, so I would definitely recommend. Give it a read. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. I know this is kind of a shorter video, and I apologize for that. I just didn't have as many books to talk about, obviously, but next month there will definitely be a longer reading wrap-up video. I have so many things planned for my August TBR. I want to read some classics like Pride and Prejudice because I've never read any Jane Austen books, and I really wanted to at least read some of them because, you know, they're classics, and wanting to be an author means you kind of have to read a bunch of different things and figure out what makes each book good or bad, and I just want to expand my reading habits a little bit. I also have this great Greek mythology book that I got in, it was either May or June. I think it was May. It is actually behind me right there. It is just a bunch of Greek mythology, and I wanted to read that because, for those of you who don't know, I'm obsessed with Greek mythology and mythology in general. I love Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, Roman mythology, Norse mythology, all of the different types, and I just wanted to read more about it because it's been a while since I've dived into mythology. I'm also planning on reading more contemporaries, including Christine Riccio's second book, Better Together. I'm going to start that when I go on my vacation in August. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you want to see more of this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those post notifications. Bye!